Jo here with another Time for Tea Designs video. I hope you're all well this Friday evening. Tonight's video was recorded during our Facebook Live last night, and we decided that we were going to work from this sketch and inspiration. So the inspiration is inspired by Laurel, and it has this sketch here with the 3 circles, but it also has the tagline "Fall is Sweet" and the colour scheme that you can see here. So those are the themes that we're going to follow, and I'm going to use some of my pattern papers that I haven't used in a really long time because they have the texture that was in our picture on the bottom there. They also have the colour scheme that's in our picture. So first of all, I've cut all of my patterned pieces of paper out of the largest frame of our Slimline Trio Circles die set. And I've got one piece of white that will sit at the top of our card, and then I've got several pieces of the patterned paper and then a couple of plain pieces of cardstock as well. The card blank that I'm using is actually a UKDL size, which is slightly smaller than our frame, but because we've cut it into pieces, that will fit perfectly. Referring back to our sketch now under the Fall is Sweet, you can see that there are lots of treats on here, some donuts and some coffee cups, which are perfect for our Bearing Gifts stamp set. So that's the stamp set that we'll be using today. Before we move on to our stamps, I'm going to cut each of my pieces of patterned paper using the Landscape Edges die. So I'm choosing different angles of slopes and different selections of my grass edges, just to create some different variations of our landscape, moving all the way up our card blank. Because on our picture there is a really pretty bright blue sky, I decided for the white piece that's going to be at the top of our card that I would add some lovely blue clouds. So I'm using this cloud stencil that is from our Spooktacular stencil and is also part of our Halloween collection. So I'm starting with some of my tumbled glass, and I'm using this stencil in a couple of different directions. So I've turned it around a couple of times just to get a different variation of my clouds, and then I'm going to go back over those again in the same direction but using my Salty Ocean Distress Oxide ink, which will give me a little bit more of that bright blue look that I was trying to achieve that was in our picture. So adding a few more layers of those, and then I will also just go back over all of my surface with what's the ink that's remaining on my brush there, just to soften some of those white portions. To add a little bit more depth and dimension to my plain pieces of cardstock, I'm going to use some of my Distress inks again. So I'm using my Crackling Campfire and the Aged Mahogany on the orange piece of cardstock. And that will make it a little bit of a deeper orange, more of a rust colour, and one that matches with the colour scheme that we're trying to achieve. For my green piece of cardstock, I'm going to use some Forest Moss and Crushed Olive, again just to give that more of an autumnal feel than the bright green of the cardstock that we had. Now all my layers are ready. I'm just going to pop them all onto my card front to make sure that they all fit and that they look great. I'm really happy with that composition. So now we've got our background almost ready, we can work on our images. So you can see here that I've already stamped out a lot of my images. So I've used the bears, 3 of the bears from the Bearing Gifts stamp set, who are so cute. I've also stamped out 1 of the coffee cups and then 2 of my donuts from that same set. The other images are a combination from the Spooktacular stamp set, so that's where I've got all of my pumpkin images from. And then the leaves and the acorns come from the Woodland Critters stamp set. So I'm really mixing and matching all of my stamp sets to really fill that brief that we had on the sketch. And this is a really cool way of you being able to use all of your different stamp sets and mix them together to come up with something completely different from what they were originally perhaps intended. You can see here that I am just colouring all of my little bears in the same way. So I'm using a combination of the E11, E13 and E15 shades. And then for their little muzzles, I'm going to use the E40 and E43. I do add some really dark brown, the E47, to the noses and to the little pads of this bear here. I'm colouring each of my images in the same way that I would normally, by adding my lightest colour first and then going in with my mid-tone and then my darkest shade last, and gradually working over each of those shades backwards and forwards until we get a really nice smooth blend. You also saw there that I just showed the Jelly Roll pen. That's the pen that I use to add highlights to each of my images, and you'll see me use that again at the end of the video. So there is quite a lot of colouring in this video, and I have sped this up obviously quite a lot. We did this live during the Facebook Live, and everyone said that they enjoyed watching the colouring. So I have left the colouring in the video today because although it's speeded up, it does give you a really good idea of how I colour my images. I did colour them very quickly during the live as well, because obviously we are under a little bit of time pressure, not an awful lot, but obviously we don't want people to be falling asleep during our Facebook Live. So I do colour very quickly, and I don't spend as much time, I suppose, making it absolutely perfect as I perhaps would if I was doing it just in my own time. So that's another thing just to be aware of. If you are colouring with your alcohol markers at home without any time pressures, do just take time to enjoy it. You don't have to rush to get to the end result. But I think what I'm able to show during the videos and during the Facebook Live is that you can colour them quite quickly as well if you want to. So you don't have to spend hours and hours colouring in lots of images in order to be able to enjoy them. So I'm adding again just a series of different oranges to make my my pumpkins, and I keep referring back to our original sketch just so that I can make sure that we are adhering to our colour scheme as much as we can do. One of the comments during the live was people sometimes struggle with sketches because they take them very literally, and then that in a way that I suppose that restricts their creative thought. So what I wanted to show during the live this time was that although we're following a sketch, we're actually creating our own project. So we're just using that as a jumping off point. We're not following it literally. We're just taking some of the elements that we like from that inspiration and making our own creation from it. So the elements that we've taken from it are most definitely the colour scheme. So some really nice fall theme colours in our card today. We're also taking the sweet element, so the donuts and the pumpkins and the coffee. I think are really nice images to have on our card today. And we're also taking the theme in the sketch where we have the 3 circles and the positioning of the sentiment. So you will see on the finished card that we are doing a slimline card and not a regular A2 size card as the sketch suggests. But we are actually instead of using the circles as they are literally placed, we're going to be using our bears instead. And I actually flip those around slightly so they're not in the exact same position as they are on the sketch. But again, this is all about using those sketches and those bits of inspiration as a jumping off point, and we don't have to take them literally. You can if you want, and that's the great thing about sketches, is that if you are struggling for a little bit of your mojo's gone a little bit and you're just struggling to know where to start, then they're great for that, because they do allow us to just follow a pattern if that's what we need to just get us going and get us out of that crafty rut that we're in. So the final image that I'm colouring up now is our donut. So again, I've referred back to my picture, and I'm going to cover those with a nice chocolate glaze, and then highlight some of those sprinkles with the brightest orange that we've used, which I believe is the YR68. So this is just going to be very simple colouring, taking care not to go over any of those sprinkles. But I'm not going to add a great deal of shading here because there isn't an awful lot of room on the top of our donuts. So just the two colours there, and then those highlights with the orange. So we can now cut out all of our lovely images with the coordinating dies. So again, I've skipped forward this bit a little bit because we did have to run some of those images through a couple of times, as obviously we've only got the one die. But each of those little bears has its own die, and the bear in the top right hand corner has the little paws cut out as well with the coordinating die, so that you can pop something in his paws, which I think is a really cute detail. Now I've got all my elements all cut out, and this is where we can really start to play around with where we want things to be and really have some fun. I do need to add my sentiment though. So we mentioned before that on the sketch, the sentiment is at the bottom of the card. So I'm taking the Grateful for You stamp set. This is a great stamp set, but I'm just going to use the sentiment from that, which is Grateful for You. And I think this could be teamed up with other sentiments if you wanted to. So with the friend, or you could even have add a sentiment that is more literal in terms of the brief. So you could have had to a sweet friend, perhaps. In order to line up all of my die cut pieces, I am going to use a little bit of washi tape just to secure them from the front in the position that I like them. So this just helps me make sure that I'm getting them all nice and straight, that I'm getting the right amount of each layer showing in the way that I want it to, and before I commit any of it to my card base. So now they're all linked together, and they've all overlapped ever so slightly. You can see there on the back. I'm now going to add some strips of my adhesive tape. And I don't normally use this kind of tape, but I felt that this was a really good way to make sure that all of my layers were stuck together really well before I then applied them to my card base. So I'm going to remove the backing from the center pieces, but then not quite the ones on the edge until I'm sure that everything is in place. Then I'll remove those remaining strips. I can now take away my washi tape, and some of those layers are not fully stuck to each other on the front, but that's fine because I want to add some of my characters perhaps sitting behind some of those layers. So you'll see that as we go through the positioning. So like I say, that little bear can hold on to his coffee cup, and now we're going to have a little bit of fun just moving things around, some of our elements, and deciding where we want each of those to sit. And if you look at where I'm positioning my bears, they are the three circles that are indicated on our sketch. So they are positioned, I suppose, almost in an off kilter triangle, in the same way that they are on the sketch. And once I'm happy with where all of my little images are going to sit, some of them in front of the layers of my landscape, some of them behind those hills, and I'm just playing with whereabouts they can all sit and using my liquid glue to add each of those in place. I didn't use any foam pads in this instance because I felt there was enough dimension with all of the layers from our hills, so I didn't feel that that was necessary. And I'm sorry about my head to keep popping into view, but I just needed to lean over so that I could make sure everything was stuck in place properly. So adding the last few pieces there, and our final pumpkin at the very top. And it's like all our little bears are just hanging out in a pumpkin patch, which I think is really cute. To finish off our sky, I'm going to use the little birds that come in the Up and Away stamp set. And I misstamped that top one, so I've just used my black pen to finish off that little piece. And then, as we mentioned before, this is my Jelly Roll pen that I'm using to add some highlights to everything. I just think this just adds the perfect finishing touch to each of your characters. And then my black glaze pen will make those eyes sparkle. And then finally, just to add a little bit of something extra to our donuts, some glossy accents will make them look like real glazed donuts. So this is our completed card, and I do think that it's actually one of my most favourite cards that I've made in a long time. And if we go back to the brief, you can see here how we've kept to that inspiration, but we've adapted it to make our own unique card. So we've used the fall is sweet element with our donuts and our coffee cups, and the texture in those cookies that are in the picture with the sweaters. We've also used the 3 circles that are on the sketch for our 3 bears, although we've flipped those around, and our sentiment is at the bottom of our card too. I really hope that you enjoyed the video today and that you were inspired by our sketch, and it gives you an idea for a project that you might want to try yourself. If you did like the video, it would be great if you could like and subscribe to our channel, and we'll be back again with more videos and inspiration both here and on our Facebook page really soon. Thanks again for watching. Bye bye guys.